I'm William McInnes and I'm going under the spell of the hammer. Travelling the auction houses of Australia, I'm seeking out people's well-loved treasures in search of the weird, the wonderful and the sometimes tear-jerking stories behind the sales.
Sold.
This week on Auction Room, it was covered in the miracle new fabric brown vinyl, and it turns out it's one of a kind. But is it worth a fortune? You look very comfortable in that chair. Are you going to miss it?
Not if I get enough money for it. I think all sentimental value will go down the toilet.
He loves it, but she hates it. Is time running out for this classic piece of Japanese design?
Not good taste, and if we can get 20 cents for it, I don't care, get rid of it.
Battery-operated 1970s Little Annie Fanny.
Little Annie Fanny, a cocktail mixer of dubious taste. And I'm frocking up, because this is an auction where the emphasis is on fun. All this and more in the Auction Room.
Sold.
$5,000.
Now, in the bigger scheme of things, modern Australia is a relatively young society. But along the way, we have produced our fair share of high achievers and heroes. But oddly enough, it wasn't until the 1960s that Australians rolled up their sleeves and competed in the world of industrial design. And I'm going to introduce you to the work of an Australian designer who became famous by sitting you down and giving you a good talking to. This week, I'm travelling across Melbourne to the Fern Tree Gully home of web designer and sci-fi fan Gordon Williams and his wife Wendy. Now, how did you work out that this chair that you'd had for years was actually something very special and worth a bit?
I had no idea. And it was only when my wife Wendy was on the internet one day looking for other furniture that she saw it and we found out it was something very special.
Well done, Wendy. Well, tell us the story of how you found
Oh, it was more by good luck than good management.
Yeah.
So I had tried to find out about the chair previously, but I couldn't. I just missed all the time. I couldn't find anything. And then I was looking for an orange vinyl chair for our balcony because we're doing a retro theme on there. And I saw one of these chairs in orange and I went, oh, there's that chair, finally. So did a bit more work on it and up came all the information, including the fact that it was rare and it was worth about $12,000 in the last auction that one was in. And I said, go on and get it off the balcony.
The designer was the self-taught and just married Grant Featherston, who had spent the previous 2 decades exploring how new techniques and materials, many of which were developed during World War II, could be used in furniture manufacture. His and wife Mary's design for the sound chairs featured in the Australian Pavilion and was literally and figuratively the talk of Montreal's Expo 67. A pressure-sensitive switch in the seat activated 3-minute tapes featuring the voices of famous Australians talking about aspects of Australian life. You look very comfortable in that chair.
It's not bad.
Are you going to miss it?
Not if I get enough money for it. I think all sentimental value will go down the toilet.
All right, now close your eyes for a tick. Just do me this. This is how it would have worked. We had sort of Rolf Harris, Bob Menzies and some sheep. Meh. Meh. I did but see her passing by. And I shall love her till the day. Meh.
I must visit Australia.
It works every time. You wouldn't want to get Bob and Rolf mixed up, would you?
I don't want them sitting in the same chair as me, that's
Time
for
the
sure.
kangaroo down, sport. Time the kangaroo down.
Wobba wobba.
There you go. Now, to my mind, the definition of an optimist is a bloke who lives in the Dandenong Ranges who wants to put in a swimming pool. Now, that may be cold comfort for the enthusiastic swimmer, but it's the very reason the chair has got to go. Tell me about your pool.
Well, I've always had a hankering to have a swimming pool.
Yeah?
But I also live on the side of a mountain that's
Yeah.
like that. So you can't get a digging machine in, you can't get a concrete pool in. We thought of helicoptering a fiberglass pool in. In the end, the only thing I could do was dig the hole and put an above-ground pool in there. So I've spent 6 months digging all the rocks out by hand, but at least now I have my pool. So my whole aim now is to be able to come up with some amount of money, I don't know how much it's going to be, with the aim of getting a solar heating system for the pool so that I can swim in it in Melbourne, and to replace this temporary fence with a glass fence.
So, your chair, what's the connection between your unique chair and the pool?
In about 1979, I was working at the Gas and Fuel Corporation, which doesn't exist anymore. And one of the designers there came up to me and said, you're into this science fiction stuff. I've got something in my garage that you're going to love. Went to his place and there's this chair of the future, as he put it there.
A chair of the future?
Yeah. And he told me this story about how some famous designer had created this chair for their tender proposal to the federal government to do some Expo 67. This one here is the original prototype, one of two, that was created for the application for the tender.
It's pretty light for cutting-edge technology circa 1967.
But I guess at the Expos, every stand had the latest motor car and their latest agricultural equipment. I mean, Australia was pretty progressive, coming up with the idea of an audio-visual production 20 years ahead of its time.
Why did you choose the collector to be your auctioneer?
Yeah, look, I've tried the big auction houses, and it's just another one of 400 really expensive items.
So the chair's a headline item.
Yeah.
Ever since establishing the Collector Auction House, Vanessa Crew and her staff have made a feature of once a month having a themed auction. This week it's rock, pop and retro, a theme that always draws an interested crowd. Vanessa believes this is the perfect auction for Gordon's chair.
Well, I've had businesses now for 32 years, and I opened my first shop in Glen Huntly called Old and Crafty. I inherited it from my mother. I was there 10 years, and then I moved to a larger premises and opened an antique centre. You know, it was a good business, but I could actually see the end of antique shops happening with the internet. And so I closed the antique centre down on April Fool's Day 2000. So that way I would never forget. And I turned it into an auction room. A lot of people thought, you know, it would be easy to go op shopping and find something and sell it on eBay, but the guts of it is they really don't have the knowledge and they don't realise how labour intensive it is, and it's very hard work. We've got a huge library of books, a lot of associates in the business that we can call on that are specialised in certain fields.
Yes, it is, because it actually isn't Bakelite, but I think
We use the internet as well, but then again, not everything's on the internet. We usually are very conservative when we're giving people estimates. So because we're conservative, we usually find people are very happy.
We're not going over, am I?
Wow.
It's the treasure trove, this place.
G'day guys, how's it going?
G'day, mate. Gordon.
Adam.
Good to meet you.
Adam, William McInnes, how are you?
Good, thanks, William.
Well, we've delivered the chair for you, the Featherstone chair.
It is fantastic, isn't it?
Have you sold one of these before?
Not one of the sound chairs before, no. We've sold a few of the other Featherstone chairs before. They're always very popular, especially over the last few years. They've actually increased quite dramatically.
This is a prototype, so it's one of a kind. Does that sort of rarity make it more...
Yeah, it should help it. It should help it for sure. It's not going to hinder it.
Right.
For
so
sure.
What do you think Gordon will be looking at for the chair?
Off the top of my head, I'm probably going to struggle to come up with something right now. I'm actually probably going to have to speak to somebody about it and then get back to you regarding that.
Fantastic.
In front, got $5. Gents bid seated. Finish going to be sold.
Adam Truscott is a valuer and the auctioneer at the Collector, and like the rest of the staff is not afraid to get into the spirit of the night. Let's face it, I only know of one other bloke who wears a red suit, but at least they both dispense gifts.
107. Criminal, $5. Great buying, dude. That's why people come to auctions. You got the chance of getting something cheap. And a $15 done. It's done. I mean, it's a bit like spruiking up there kind of thing. You just have to... There's not really much you can do to motivate buyers. If you're animated up there and have a little bit of fun and things like that, that can help. But it's actually the item that motivates the buyers. It's actually the lot or the item itself. There's not really much I can do about that. The group one. 5 seats in the middle is now. $3 done. 4-1.
The drag stuff.
So there's some fantastic sort of 1950s, 60s and 70s items. Records, stereo equipment. There's also pinball machines and jukeboxes and all sorts of great stuff.
1960s was a very tumultuous time in Australian history. It was a period of radical innovation. Everything from politics to music, from fashion to lifestyle, was being questioned by a new generation. That's right. The dear old baby boomers had well and truly arrived. And for the first time ever, young people had a bigger disposable income than their parents. And the period was also marked by a flood of technological developments all around the world. And we didn't know it at the time, but we were about to be inundated with the Made in Japan trademark. Rob Duffield is the general manager of a Swan Hill newspaper. And more importantly for us, he's an avid collector and fancies himself as a bit of a trader.
Well, kitchenalia, lots of plastic things, Bakelites. So I dabble in everything that comes from that era.
Although his wife Rosemary and daughter Verity share his passion, one of his latest acquisitions has caused more than a little friction.
But you know I hate it.
I stood outside that op shop and I waited for it to open.
Rob pretty much collects anything that's retro, and he's been collecting for more than 10 years, so we have a lot of stuff that I think is fairly tasteless. There are lots of times when I say, no, that is gross. That is not coming home. No, it's not worth anything. And quite often Rob will still bring it home and it'll be worth something.
Dad just collects pretty much everything. And so he buys like 2 things and sells 1. So it just keeps growing. And sometimes it's really embarrassing when my friends come over. They sort of don't want to hear about it, but he doesn't take the hint.
Well, the clock, it's been a bit frosty in relation to the clock.
Well, the clock, I guess, is a piece that I don't like very much. And the first time I saw it, he said to me, do you think this could be good? And I said, oh, it's just so gross and horrible. No way are we bringing that home. Whatever you can get for it, I'd be happy.
I had affection for it, if you know what I mean. And I really liked it. And then I actually wrote down the name of the brand. Then I Googled it and found out that it was a very valuable clock. The New York website where I first found it had it at $2,400 US. My face must have just lit up when I found this clock and took it to the counter and they said $15.
Now here's a warning. Don't believe all you see on the internet. More research by Rob did reveal that 2 years ago an identical clock owned by comedian Lucille Ball sold at auction for almost $400 American. That's a long way short of $2,400.
Fake marble, fake green marble. Who would want it?
Oh, I think Rosemary would be ecstatic if I sold the clock at auction and realised the money for a trip that we're taking later in the year.
Meanwhile, back at the collector, Adam has called in Jeff Isaac, an enthusiast collector and author on the life and designs of the Featherstones.
I think the first thing you notice about this chair is the speakers, and how they're exposed in the headrest.
Okay.
And obviously the buttons that are used in the upholstery. And so they're sort of early indicators to me that this is probably an example from the Mark II range.
What did he say? The Mark II range?
Because the Mark I range had separate headrests with the speakers built into it.
Maybe the chair isn't the unique beast that Gordon's been led to believe.
So, the original chair was put together very quickly, just in a period of 6 months.
Okay.
And so the sound equipment was produced completely separately from the chair, and then it was assembled at the last moment. And so the headrest contained speakers, and that was actually physically stuck onto the chair.
Does this jeopardise the hopes of a big price?
In Montreal.
So, Jeff, no question that it's a copy or a cheap reproduction or...
Oh no, I think it looks very right. It looks very similar. I mean, and again, this access panel here to get to the speaker is very much it resembles what was used in the final version of the Mark II. So this is the Mark I. And as you can clearly see that there's a headrest and the lack of the padding in the back, so there was no buttons.
Yeah, it's quite loose, the covering, isn't
that's it? Loose.
Gordon's putting on a brave face, but I detect the sounds of a heart slowly sinking into a cold Dandenong swimming pool.
So, Jeff, the story I was told from the designer that this was actually gifted to him as part of the design community by Grant and Mary Featherstone. Is that myth, true story, maybe true?
Certainly could be true. I mean, there were the Mark II was developed very quickly after the Mark I. It was such a huge success. It really was the talk of the town, both here and in Montreal. Grant Featherstone quite typically capitalised on that interest and was set about setting up a local version of it.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so I think obviously he would have gone into some kind of prototypes before he went into full-scale production.
Okay.
So I think
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've got an indication that I might get more than the $60 I paid for it.
Certainly, yeah. We think we're going to get you a good return on that $60, but I can see it easily getting $6,000 to $8,000.
Okay.